tell you, I was telling Sam, I said, Sam, I can't get emotionally invested.
Back on the rise again.
I like them so much. It really hurts my feelings when they leave.
Sure.
I got just one.
People can't forget.
No, they can't forget.
I almost
And you think the law school is telling them to hop in and hop out?
Yeah.
I think that's what these guys just got to do.
Here's the guy.
If you want to go for it, great.
Thank you.
And first, I'll help you in the market. Man, those people love for the private firms to train them. And
Defeated me on Facebook.
it's interesting too because they in the world of two working couples, they have a really interesting proposition for folks that both have professional jobs. It's one thing to do is
Probably said, oh, she looks like she's 16. I went to take this.
Is that COVID on right again? Bad. Real bad. It just ain't putting people in ER like it was, but it's still making folks sick. That's what a lot of people are trying to say, no, that ain't worked out. When it's symptoms over with the R, they don't want to. Somehow it's kind of taboo. I don't know what.
No, I got to figure out. Well, hopefully we don't see it. Okay, good deal. You think you're all right?
Hey, if you sniffling, coughing, whatever, you still need to go get your cups. Whether you want to take the test or not, you still need to go and stay away from people. Yep.
Considering colleges, what you did in NC State.
Susan was driving. I hope she's changed cars. Susan Pierce. She was
I saw her car, I think.
in a little red one. She had a blue, now it's a red on.
Oh, I saw that.
I couldn't see her hard down the steering wheel.
One of my daughter's hair bows was in my notebook for some reason. What are we waiting on?
4 minutes, I think.
bingo. We have a winner.
We can wait 4 minutes.
It's on this here. I would
Yeah, we can wait.
Mayor York, Mayor York, Commissioner Baxter's on her way.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Zebulon Board of Commissioners monthly meeting, September 11th, 2023. Before I ask Commissioner Miles to do the Pledge of Allegiance, we will recognize in remembrance of 9/11, 22 years ago, first responders and victims that gave their lives. 22 seconds, please. Thank you. Now, Commissioner Miles will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
So, if I could have everybody join in with me, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we will have the approval of the agenda.
Mayor, can I pull the special, I'm so sorry, the Zebulon Chamber of Commerce membership ordinance, please?
Okay.
That's it.
That's it.
Yes, thank you.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
We have a motion, Commissioner Daniels.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Harrison, I'm sorry. And second, Commissioner. Questions? All in favor? Motion passed. Public comment. Looks like we have Ron Snow signed up. Come to the podium, please.
Good evening, Ms. Baxter. My name's Ron Scow.
I'm sorry.
I recently moved here from Warren County. So this is my first meeting. And the reason I signed up was I didn't see 9/11 on your agenda, but Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you mentioning it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else sign up for public comment?
No, sir.
Do we have anyone that sent emails or letters in for public comment?
No, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent.
I move to approve the consent as amended.
We have a motion. Second, Commissioner Laux. Questions? All in favor? Motion passes. Old business, planning.
Good evening. I'm going to be presenting CZ 2023-03, Ordinance 2024-07 for the 1106 North Arundel conditional rezoning. As we do with all of these meetings now, I want to kind of go through and make sure that we have a full understanding of these standards that are to be followed for conditional rezonings. The first of which is whether the proposed conditional rezoning advances the public health, safety, and welfare. Number two is whether the extent of which the proposed conditional rezoning is appropriate for its proposed location and is consistent with the purposes, goals, objectives, and policies of the town's adopted policy guidance. Whether the approved conditional zoning is reasonable and in the public interest. Whether the extent of the concept plan associated meets the regulations established within the ordinance. And then any other factors that the Board of Commissioners deem appropriate. So in talking through this, well, hopefully pull this away from me and stop having that ringing going off. Apologize. Rezoning request for CZ 2023-03 is to rezone a piece of property at 1106 North Arundel from HC heavy commercial to heavy commercial conditional, specifically for the use of a convenience store with gasoline sales. Property owner or applicant is C4 C-Store Holdings. The property owner is a collection of Tart family, Fitch family, and Burlington family. Again, the property address is 1106 North Arundel Avenue. It's approximately 3.51 acres. And as I stated, is currently zoned heavy commercial, and they're looking to rezone to heavy commercial conditional. Public hearing notifications did go out with signs being posted on both frontages. The notices were mailed to property owners within 750 feet, and they were posted in the paper of general circulation, which is the Wake Weekly. It was also posted on the town's website, as well as the email notification list, which anyone can sign up for and get notifications of rezonings that are going through or any kind of planning items. Looking at the aerial map, you'll see the Wake County facility to the northeast, across Dogwood, vacant property within the Truist Bank, as well as the credit union across Arundel. Property itself is surrounded by a large portion of R2 residential, which, although it looks like a large swath of residential right now, it's currently undeveloped. And if you look at our future land use plan, you can see there is a combination of suburban commercial and general commercial surrounding the area. So this type of use is in line with our future land use plan. Looking at a timeline of activity for this project going through, it was originally submitted on 3/1, and we were able to send out comments within 1 month or just after 1 month. The TRC meeting occurred, and then they submitted 1 month after that for their second review addressing the TRC comments. After they received comments, we were able to get the joint public hearing packet submitted and mailed out with some revised DOT conditions, which I can go into a little bit further on. And then the joint public hearing was on last month on the 14th. Looking at the concept plan specifically, as you can see, it's a convenience store with gasoline sales. There are 2 pump areas, one being specifically for trucks, 18-wheelers, and then the other being for passenger vehicles. The proposed elevations of the site, which we'll get into more detail regarding the conditions of this request, you can see here with A being the primary looking frontage. That's the frontage that is the primary entrance. D is actually the primary frontage that faces Dogwood. In listing some of the specific conditions, we were talking about gasoline pumps between the building and the street. If you notice on the site plan on the Jones Street extension, that is where the truck fueling area was. And that is against the ordinance, but they are requesting a condition to allow that being in that location. And then there are some specific facade requirements, which I'll get into in the next couple slides. And they're going to be, the other condition is a series of construction and road improvements, which I'll get into as well. Regarding the facade requirements, if you look at the south wall, they were not able to achieve the 30% required transparency or glazing. They were able to hit it at just 29%, but could not get past that with their design. So they're requesting that condition. On the western property wall, which is the side that faces Arundel, they were able to get 33% transparency or glazing. You'll see there is a little bit of transparency in the emergency exit door, but the remainder of the windows are spandrel glazing, so non-transparent. And that is what they're requesting their condition, to be able to have that spandrel glazing, and that was primarily due to the layout of the interior of the building, just not being able to have transparent glass there. And then on the east wall, they have no transparency provided. This wall is the wall that actually abuts the truck fueling area, so there's quite a big distance between that and the Jones Street extension. As far as the proposed road improvements that they're including as for conditions on this, the first is a eastbound right turn lane on Dogwood Drive into the site. That is a D-cell right turn lane. They also will have, or requesting a westbound left turn lane on Dogwood that is leaving Dogwood, taking a left onto Arundel. And then finally, they would be installing a left turn lane on the US 64 off-ramp. That is a condition that was brought up by DOT Congestion Management and requested staff for them to include, and they obliged. As well as retiming and signal grades to address all the light changes and lane changes on Dogwood and Arundel. Regarding the utility allocation policy, one of the larger improvements that they include on here was the roadway infrastructure improvement that was not warranted by the TIA, UDO, or CTP, and that was the construction of the full width of Jones Street. Our CTP and UDO only require the construction of half of the road width, so they're going above and beyond with that. The second thing that they've got to get points for this policy is they're using a wetland-style stormwater control measure, and they may be able to talk a little bit more on that. I'm not an engineer, so I can't give the specs on exactly what that is. And then they are including 10 additional native shade tree species, and to be clear, these are 10 trees that would not be required by our landscaping standards, so above and beyond what is required. Again, before we get to anything else, talking about the conditions that have to be met for conditional rezonings is whether or not the conditional rezoning advances the public health, safety, and welfare, whether it's appropriate for the location, whether it's reasonable and in the public interest, and the concept plan is consistent with our regulations, and lastly, any factors you all deem relevant. The planning board recommended approval of a 6-to-1 vote, seeing that it was consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and consistent with the standards I just stated. Staff recommends approval for the same reasons. I'd be happy to take any questions. I know the applicant is here if there are some questions specifically for them, but anything for me?
Questions from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
Yeah, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what that stormwater wetland area is going to look like and how it's going to be built out, please.
While he's coming up, I'm going to pull up the landscape sheet that kind of shows it so you can.
Good evening. My name is Matt Louder. I'm with Bowman Consulting, and I'll be the civil engineer for the project. Yes, for stormwater management, basically we will collect all of the runoff from the impervious areas of the site, the parking lot, the building, the truck areas, and all that will be diverted into the stormwater wetland. Basically what a stormwater wetland is we're trying to mimic or recreate a natural wetland through an engineered type system. All the stormwater will come to it. It will basically serve two purposes. First purpose is it'll contain water and detain it, and so that the release from the wetlands will be slowed to kind of mimic the natural flow of water through the system. It'll pond water for a little while the storm events are fluctuating through the system, but it's intended to, like I said, mimic the natural runoff and flow through the site. The second thing that the constructed wetland will do is actually mimic a wetland by having water quality features. It'll help reduce the pollutants from the site, suspended solids, the gas, the petrol, things like that will run off into the system. It'll do that through wetland plantings, and that's why it's called a constructed wetland. And those wetlands, there's a wide variety of different plantings that we can put in there. We'll put flowering plantings in there and a wide list, but basically the intent of those is to remove the pollutants from the stormwater while it's being detained in there and basically release that into the natural system as clean as it can possibly be.
So this isn't going to try to actually mimic a true wetland, because clearly if it's going to be catching the pollutants, a lot of what we would normally consider wetland species won't be able to survive in there? Or is that where that fencing comes in?
Well, like I said, there's a wide list of plantings, and the plantings that they do have that are available to use in this are ones you would see in the natural condition. And it's not one type of planting. There's going to be a wide variety of plantings in there. Some will thrive in shallow water, some will thrive in a little bit deeper water. But the overall goal is to try to mimic a natural wetland to the extent practical through an engineered type system.
And can you tell me the exact square footage of what that space is going to look like?
It's very similar to what we have shown there. This is just representative.
It's just hard for me to take a look at that and to know exactly how large that's going to be.
Just a ballpark number is probably going to be 3,000 to 4,000 square feet as far as the surface of it.
Okay.
And that's when we get into the construction drawings and design, we'll have that fine-tuned, but somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. I have one more. It's not necessarily for you, but if you can answer it, I mean, it might be for you.
As a team, we'll try.
Okay, fantastic. And so I just need to make sure that I have a commitment from the developer that there is going to be both an emergency shut-off by the truck fueling area as well as the car and other vehicle fueling areas.
I know this came up I'm Tom Johnson with the firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700 in Raleigh. I know this came up at the public hearing, so we checked into that. Here's the way it's set up. As anything today, most all of it is automated. So if anything happens, say somebody comes and runs into a pump and takes it out, it shuts off. It automatically has an automatic shut off. If somebody tries to drive off with the hose still in their car, it'll disconnect and it's got to shut off. So all of that is automatic. In the event there was something beyond that, the automatic system failed or anything like that, there is a shut off, a manual shut off inside the store. So they can cut it off there. But that's the way that system works. So it's automated. There are valves that shut off. Doesn't depend on somebody having to run around and find a button somewhere who's not familiar with where it may or may not be. So that's the way that works. And that's in compliance with all the safety features that are required by federal and state law.
I know that things happen and having automatic features is the way that the direction that things are moving, but this facility, this commercial use is right next to both our Eastern Regional Center as well as our library, and I need to feel comfortable that, say, someone's fueling doesn't pay attention and they've overfilled their little gas canister that they're going to take home and use to mow their lawn, or they drop it and they panic and something needs to be shut off in the moment. When I worked in Naperville for the corporate offices at BP, all of those facilities, all of our stations had manual shutoffs on the outside as well as the inside, as well as the automatic components. So I'm sure that in the time since I worked for the company, things have changed as far as automation, but we are talking about having some of our littlest and most precious citizens close by for story hour.
No, I understand that. That's why, again, there is a manual shutoff. You know, the downside and what you have to weigh a little bit is you don't want anybody who's just going out and shutting it off just to shut it off and to create mischief either. And it needs to be monitored by someone that knows where it is, which the employees know where it is, as opposed to depending on someone who doesn't know where it is and you seeing someone who panics. It's better for somebody who's level-headed and trained to be able to cut it off inside if any of the automated systems fail. So that's the way it's set up to work, you know, in that manner. And that's the way it's designed. And regardless of what's nearby. And I mean, there are numerous types of uses and buildings that are nearby any number of these facilities. And it's worked well. And like I say, it's in compliance with federal and state safety rules.
Any other questions from the board? Commissioner Miles?
No questions this time.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions.
Commissioner Harrison?
No question.
Commissioner Laux?
No questions.
Thank you. Is there no other questions or comments from the board, from staff? Do we have a motion?
I hereby move to approve ordinance 2024-07 for conditional zoning 2023-03 as presented, finding that the request is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and the standards in section 2.2.6.k of the UDO.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Harrison. Questions, discussion, comments? Hearing none, we have a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
Approve.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux?
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, drop-in daycare, staff.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here to give you the presentation again on the drop-in daycare ordinance 2024-08 and to answer any questions that you guys may have tonight. So again, just a quick summary. This is a text amendment that the town of Zebulon is bringing forth with a request to amend Table 2.2.13.a of Chapter 9, which would establish the regulation for drop-in daycares. So again, I'm going to just go over real quick what the difference is between a child care center and a drop-in daycare. So child care centers are really meant to be something that is used on a more regular basis to watch children for longer periods of time, any time period over 4 hours, for parents who will not be remaining local to the facility. And also, in addition to indoor spaces, child daycare centers also require outdoor spaces. Drop-in daycares, which is what we're proposing to add, if you guys choose to approve, is a child care type that happens on a more irregular basis, is for watching children for shorter periods of time, less than 4 hours, for parents running local errands, and for and there's no outdoor space requirement within a drop-in daycare. So this would be the change that you would actually see in the text. So it's adding this as a new use type and permitting it in the same districts as childcare daycare, with the exception of any of the residential districts. And again, that goes back to the whole purpose of the drop-in daycares is to be in commercial areas so parents can run quick errands and have short-term care. So I'm just going to go over these standards real quick, and these are just what to keep in mind as you are considering this text amendment today. So these standards are laid out in section 2.2.20.g of the town's UDO. It's number one, that the public health, safety, and welfare is considered, that this meets the town's adopted policy guidelines, that is not in conflict with any of the current guidelines, that it is a change in conditions, that it demonstrates a community need, that it is not a current matter that is presented in the UDO currently, that is consistent with the purpose and intent, that it is logical and that it is consistent with a logical and orderly development pattern, any other factors that you guys deem relevant, and then that this will have no adverse impacts on the community. The Planning Board recommended approval with the caveat of adding reference to the state standards. So we have added that into a revised copy of this from what you saw at the joint public hearing, just making sure that it's in the definition referencing the state standards. And then they found that this is consistent with section 2.2.20.g of the UDO. And as well, it is consistent with the land use and development section of the comprehensive land use plan. So staff recommends approval of ordinance 2024-08, finding the request as amended by the planning board that it is consistent with section 2.2.20.g of the UDO and the land use and development section of the comprehensive land use plan. I'm here now to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Commissioner Baxter?
So I am assuming that in our packet, we have the updated information, correct?
It should have the updated text.
Okay, so I'm looking on page, is it 106 that has the reference to the state code? Because I just didn't see it. Could you show me where it's at?
I believe, I don't have the packet right in front of me, but I believe that it would be within the definition. I believe it references the state code, and if not, you guys can propose that you approve it as amended, and we'll make sure to make those changes before we add it into the text.
So is it just like if it, where it says, and now I'm looking on 108, Clinton, or 106, where it says a commercial or nonprofit use regulated by the state, is that the only additional verbiage?
That is the additional reference, yes. If you guys would like something further, we can add something further. We just referenced it in the definition because when changing the text, it's just a little more efficient to add it in here rather than creating a use-specific standard, which would cause a renumbering of all of our uses, which might cause confusion on other projects.
Okay, and so when we talk about our standards, and we look on page 103 where it says number 5 addresses a demonstrated community need. Right above that, it says staff have received a couple of inquiries about this use over the past 2 years. So 2 people have asked about this in the past 2 years, and we're going through this process. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a terrible thing to do, but I'm just like, is this how we're moving forward? So I guess it's actually a better question for you, Mr. Clark. You know, like, what is our threshold for when we start doing text amendments? Is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 20? I'm assuming that there's going to be some level of, it depends on the situation, but just so that I have a better understanding.
You're 100% correct when you talk about it. It depends upon the situation. In this context, we received an inquiry approximately 3.5 years ago regarding this specific use and activity in a more commercial generated area. Specifically, it was going to be north of the freeway. We indicated that at this time we did not have a use that would allow for that, and we recommended that they come back before everybody either for a text amendment. It was right after, it would have been right after our zoning code went to unified development ordinance. They chose not to explore at that time. Since then, somebody else came forward. To my understanding, they're no longer looking to do that. However, it triggered enough research in what other communities have, the needs of the communities, that we determined internally that this is a good thing in order to accommodate some of the needs of the residents here, as well as the residents that are going to be coming to Zebulon.
And there's going to be no uses where this is going to need a special use permit. These are all just going to be permitted uses within the areas indicated?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you so very much.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Miles?
For you, I believe this is a useful amendment and was presented with a few questions by parents. They asked the rationale behind the specification of dropping off being only for non-working related, also non-employment activities, and how could this be monitored?
Yeah, so again, that somewhat goes back to the state regulations. So there are specific state standards and a specific agency that deals with childcare facilities. So they would be responsible for upkeep and making sure, checking in with those daycares to make sure that they are doing the use that they are intending to be used for. And then as far as answering the question of like why it is intentionally, the language is intentional about saying non-work related stuff, is that usually work periods are a little longer than 4 hours or around 4 hours, so that doesn't give much time for that drop-in nature. And so that would be, if your child needed care in that way, that would be something that would be better fitting of a child care facility. So that would be just a different use type in that facility. So this is really intended for the short term.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the board? Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I hereby move to approve ordinance 2024-08, finding the request as amended by the planning board, finding that the request is consistent with section 2.2.20.g of the UDO and the land use and development section of the comprehensive use plan.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Laux. Discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Laux. Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor?
Commissioner Miles. Favor. Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Parks, RV parks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I'm coming back before you tonight for applicant-driven text amendment, specifically ordinance 2024-09. The applicant is Jennifer Ashton from Longleaf Partners. She's specifically requesting to amend section 2.2.13 subsection A, which is known as the use table, to allow RV parks to be considered as part of a planned development. It's important to once again note that she is not asking for approval of an RV park at this time, just the tools to allow a potential applicant to come back before you as part of a planned development for an RV park. As I noted, the only text amendment would be to this table. As you recall, RV parks are permitted only by a special use permit in the residential multifamily, the light industrial, as well as the heavy industrial zoning districts, as shown here on the screen. The applicant is requesting that they be allowed as part of a planned development consideration. Once again, with planned developments, this is not something that is an arbitrary approval process. The applicant must demonstrate that this is clearly better than what would otherwise be permitted under strict interpretation of the ordinance. So by authorizing it as allowed as part of a planned development does not create a blanket approval for RV parks to be considered as part of all requests for planned developments. It would be a case-by-case specific scenario. As noted earlier, there are a series of standards that would be applicable to text amendments. First and foremost, that's within the public's health, safety, and welfare, that it is consistent with the town's adopted policy guidance. Specifically in this situation, it would be our comprehensive land use plan. That's not in conflict with other provisions or regulations within our ordinances or regulations. That is reflective of changing conditions within either the market or the demographics or the characteristic of the community. That's demonstrated a community need, such as the previous case that there's been multiple requests coming before. That the matter is not currently present. There's not another way that they could accomplish this through the regular methods in our Unified Development Ordinance. That's consistent with the purpose and intent, specifically that this section of the ordinance is created to allow for consideration and updates of our Unified Development Ordinance, that it results in a logical, orderly development plan. As noted, this would be part of a planned development, which is a case-specific scenario where they have to demonstrate how it would be a benefit to the community. Other relevant factors as deemed appropriate by the Board of Commissioners, and that the approval of the text amendment would not result in any adverse impacts. The planning board did unanimously recommend approval, noting that they felt that it met the applicable standards of the Unified Development Ordinance, as well as the economic development section of our comprehensive land use plan. Staff can recommend approval of ordinance 2024-09, reflective of the applicant's request. I'm available if you have any questions. Additionally, the applicant is present tonight if you have any questions for them.
Any questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter.
So are four-wheelers and motocross bikes and those types of vehicles going to be allowed to operate on the property? I know that this is in the planned development district, and sometimes those types of recreational vehicles create a lot of noise.
That is not pertinent to tonight's request. That would be pertinent if the applicant did come back before you for a planned development request. This is only to allow for them to submit an application to do so. That'd be a good question for the applicant if they did come back.
So that's, if we were to add this RV park as a text amendment, can we include within that we either don't care if there are four-wheelers and motocross bikes, or that we would prefer not to have them? Or is this going to be on a case-by-case basis that we would address that?
Yeah, as I noted earlier, these requests would be addressed by a case-by-case basis, specifically noting that the intent and nature of planned developments is to result in a development that would be better than what would otherwise be permitted under a strict interpretation of the ordinance. As such, if there are particular locations where those type of activities might be appropriate, it could be considered in that circumstance. If this is going to be located clear or next to a commercial property or a residential neighborhood, as an example, that might not be appropriate. So those questions would be addressed at the time of a planned development application, not quite a text amendment.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Miles?
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Clark?
None.
Commissioner Harrison?
None.
Commissioner Laux?
None.
Is there a motion?
I hereby make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-09, finding that the proposed amendment is consistent with the standards of section 2.2.0.g of the UDO and the economic development section of the comprehensive land use plan.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Miles? Any discussion? Ready for roll vote? Commissioner Laux?
In favor?
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter?
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, construction drawings. Staff?
All right, looking at construction drawings, kind of walk through a few things. Our current plan process, this amendment itself is really to resolve some issues that we have in clarification within our ordinance. Our current planning process for things that are going for a conditional rezoning, plan development, or special use permit, you will have things that are listed as site plan, then it comes to you for board approval, and then they come back as site plan. Those names are the exact same, but what they are including in their documents are pretty different. The first site plan that you all typically see is one that is a site layout, shows the landscape plan, parking configuration, general utility layout, and lighting. Very simple, 2D, nothing too crazy, not getting into the engineered details before you all approve the site. The second site plan is when it gets into the more construction design, the engineered details, the infrastructure improvements, grading, utility design, details in specific landscape species. That's the way it currently lists, and there is some confusion when plans are running through our review system and with our with dealing with the City of Raleigh Public Utilities, the Sedimentation Erosion Control Team, all part of our TRC, where they ask me right away, what type of review am I doing for this? Am I doing an engineer review? Am I just doing a preliminary review? So with this proposed amendment, it is updating the language and breaking out some preliminary plan review processes. So there would be a residential preliminary plan as well as a non-residential site plan. Those would have specific spell outs or specific things within their documents for the application that is referring to what they're looking for specifically, because the non-residential site plan obviously has a little bit of a different site layout than your residential preliminary plan. Upon board approval, then both of those would turn into construction drawings, and that makes it very clear for our TRC and our review team, our third-party reviewers, what exactly they're looking for in this review process. So it is taking a complex and convoluted process and making it more clear for you all, for us, for the TRC, and the general public when we're posting these things, and it doesn't just say site plan, and then they see site plan again a year later, and it's unsure where it is in the process. So, dealing with this, the planning board recommended unanimous approval because it met the standards of 2.2.20G of the UDO, and then staff recommends approval as well for the same reasons. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions about this text amendment if you all have any.
Any questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Hawks?
Not at this time.
Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner Clark?
None.
Commissioner Miles?
None this time, sir.
Commissioner Baxter?
Yes. So the major exemption that I'm seeing is just with the construction of single-family detached dwelling units, accessory dwelling units, and then changes that aren't going to affect the on-street and off-street parking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes. Are you
Okay.
talking about the specifics, the exemptions that are listed in the procedure section for each one?
It's under, no, it's not under the procedure. It's under like its own thing called exemptions.
Okay.
And I just, there wasn't listed exemptions prior, but so that's what I'm understanding to be one of the more significant changes.
Let me grab the.
Okay, so I am looking on page, I think it starts on 124.
Okay.
And I would just like to, while Adam's looking for that, to make a statement that it is so wonderful to have all of our pages in our booklet, in our packet now numbered so that I feel like I've got a world of power now that I can tell you what page to look on, so thank you for that.
So dealing with those exemptions, those are exemptions to the site plan review process, the preliminary plan review process. Single-family homes, single-family dwellings, that's specific for a single-family home, not one you see in a neighborhood or subdivision as part of their subdivision plan. That's
Right.
dealing with somebody doing an infill lot or something along those lines. So that's saying that they don't have to follow these procedures just to do.
So
that
they're not
use.
going to have to do the site plan, the review,
Yeah,
the
they will
site
not
plan
be
thing.
involved in that
Okay,
process.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that correctly. Thank you very much. That was the only question that I had.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I hereby move to approve ordinance 2024-10 to amend Article 2 of the UDO as well as any related ancillary changes associated with the amendment, finding the request is consistent with Section 2.2.20G of the UDO.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Laux. Discussion? Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Commissioner Miles? Favor. Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux? Motion passes. Thank you. Construction development signs. Staff?
So I am here to present to you guys again on the construction/development sign amendment, which would be ordinance 2024-11. So an overview, yet again, this is a Town of Zebulon amendment that we are proposing, and the request is to amend 5.11.6 of the Town of Zebulon UDO to add a construction/development sign type. So the definition of a construction/development sign is a temporary sign located on a lot for the duration of its construction or development. And at the bottom of the screen are a couple of examples of what those might look like. Our dimensional standards that we laid out have a maximum height of 8 feet, a maximum sign face area of 32 square feet per side with 2 sides maximum, and then a minimum setback from the lot line of 10 feet. So this was something that was inconsistent in the document before, and we have updated that and changed it so that it's consistent in both the visual as well as within the table. So some durational standards. Again, as we talked about at the joint public hearing, this will be a sign that is different than other sign types as it is a temporary sign, but has a opportunity for re-review at the 2-year mark within all residential districts, and then at the 1-year mark within any non-residential and mixed-use districts. And this is just to make sure that the general upkeep of these signs is being upheld, as well as making sure that all of the signs are relevant and up to date with what new development is happening within the Town of Zebulon. So as well, these signs will have to be removed once the development is determined to be complete. So these are some additional standards. I won't go through all of them because you have them in your packet and they're right here. But if you have any questions about these, you can ask me during the question period. Again, we are considering this with the purview of standards in section 2.2.20.g, which are as follows: that this text amendment will uphold the public's health, safety, and welfare, that this text amendment will be in line with the town's adopted policy guidance, that this text amendment is not in conflict with any other policies, that this text amendment will be a change in condition, would be due to a change in conditions, that this text amendment demonstrates community need, that this text amendment is a matter that is not already presented within the UDO adoption, that this text amendment, is consistent with the purpose and intent of the UDO, that this text amendment is logical, that promotes logical and orderly development patterns, that this text amendment follows any other factors that you deem necessary, and that this text amendment will have no adverse impacts on the Town of Zebulon. The Planning Board recommended approval with the recommended amending of the table to be consistent with the 10-foot shown on the graphic. I also just wanted to mention real quick, I know that at the joint public hearing, they brought up some other concerns about different type of construction, safety and signage, and we will be working with them as well as you guys to create another text amendment that will address those concerns as well. So staff recommends approval. And we find that is consistent with 2.2.20.g of the Town of Zebulon UDO. And I'm here to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Laux?
None.
Commissioner Harrison?
None.
Commissioner Clark?
None.
Commissioner Miles?
None at this time, sir.
Commissioner Baxter?
Nope.
Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance 2024-11, finding that the request is consistent with section 2.2.20.g of the UDO and the land use and development section of the comprehensive land use plan.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Miles. Discussion. Do we have a roll vote? Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Harrison,
Favor.
Commissioner Laux.
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, Governing Board Rules and Procedures for Remote Meetings. Manager Moore.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. At board direction, staff brought forth a policy to guide the conduct of remote meetings at their work session on April 20th, 2023. The board provided feedback to increase the number of remote participants for either, quote, planned remote participation, end quote, or, quote, emergency remote participation, end quote, and to increase the amount of time for a remote participant to reconnect with the meeting. These changes were brought before the board at their August work session with no comments being rendered. This discussion before the board centers around whether they are interested in allowing and also financially supporting remote meetings. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Miles.
Earlier, I sent I just said this, I sent an email to Joe Moore, the town manager, a few questions I had, suggestions about the draft. He responded that it would be easier for us to kind of table it one more time until September 21st, which is next Thursday, to discuss, so we can finalize and answer those few questions that I have and kind of go from there. So I would like to make a motion to.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Laux?
Maybe proceed with the pricing and more details in the 15,000, and then we can fine-tune these procedures at a work session, because you brought up some good comments, some tweaks.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
I agree with Commissioner Laux. I'd like to see a little bit more information about the $15,000 that's going to be needed to upfit chambers in order for us to conduct these meetings, and I also agree that we should table this till the work session.
Commissioner Harrison?
What also, in addition to the $15,000, if we could get maybe, if we table this, if we could get maybe other options that may not be as costly, or maybe like another plan that may not cost the town as much but could still get us what we need. So maybe just more than one option, then that amount would be great. If there is another option. Thank you.
Commissioner Laux?
Joe, town manager, the 15,000 was the low budget option, was it not? With minimum speakers and...
Well, it depends on how much participation you want in remote participation. So the lowest cost, which I have seen, would be you hook up a phone next to a microphone. And so that's obviously not 15,000. The 15,000 would be to set up this room specifically to operate like a Zoom meeting, so people can see and be seen in real time.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? I think Commissioner Miles wanted to make a motion.
Correct. I make a motion to table ordinance 2024-12, governing board rules and procedure for remote meetings to our next work session Thursday, September 21st, 2023.
What time?
Second.
I think it starts at 6, I think.
Is it 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
5 or 6.
Work session.
What's that? 5, at 5 p.m.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Baxter? Any discussion from the board? We have a roll vote. Commissioner Laux?
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter?
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. New business?
Mayor, Commissioner Baxter pulled an item off of consent.
Yes. It'd be the chamber ordinance.
Commissioner Baxter?
Yeah, the chamber ordinance says $1,000, and that was an arbitrary number. That was not the lowest option, not the second option, but not a third option. So I see that John Saffold is sitting back there. Hey, John. I don't know why the $1,000 was kind of decided upon. If John has any comments about that, I'd be absolutely interested in hearing them. Otherwise, I'd just like to kind of discuss with the board if we would prefer to actually commit to a tier of participation with the chamber and not solely just a number that we've picked out of the sky. And I do realize that it is sort of in alignment with how we do nonprofit funding, but this is kind of a different situation.
Mayor, I can provide some context that might be helpful for the board. So Commissioner Baxter alluded to one of the rationales, which is the $1,000 is the maximum amount that you provide to any nonprofit. So that was part of the rationale. The other part of the rationale is the tier system that the chamber has is really more geared to commercial or for-profit ventures, meaning for a membership they get in exchange, examples being they get profiled on their webpage. The town of Zebulon is really not in the business of trying to get some sort of transaction like that, and there is no nonprofit membership. And so given that there was no tier associated with nonprofit, we had to create something. And then the third rationale is, and I don't want to really get into speaking for the chamber, but I get the sense that they are looking at revisiting these tiers anyway, and so the tier structure that they have right now may not be relevant in a few months. But those are three pieces of the rationale why we put $1,000 before you for consideration.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Miles?
For me, I would love to know the tiers that they currently have for the chamber. Is that possible?
Good evening. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mayor. So, very good question. We are in the midst, as Joe said, in restructuring the membership tiers. The dollar amount is not likely to change a whole lot. The membership benefits have not been reviewed since 2018, and a lot has changed, especially with COVID. So is the board's decision along with mine, the chamber board's decision along with mine, to revisit what those various benefits are so that they are more up to date. So as far as the membership tiers are concerned, you could say the $500 level is the entry level. Then $825 would be the second level, and then $2,500 is the third level.
And just to be clear, the town is not asking for any membership benefits. We are just doing this to kind of make sure that we are publicly stating our alignment and collaboration with the chamber.
I'll defer to Joe on that one as representative of the town.
That's really a board decision on your rationale for support. We rely upon the chamber to represent the business community, so there is an economic development connection there. We specifically have, or you specifically have in your strategic plan under the Growing Smart, that you will partner with organizations within your community to further economic development. So I think there's a policy connection there that you can rest upon as far as the rationale to support the chamber.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
For the chamber, I know one of the biggest things that you guys provide for is this the Christmas parade that the citizens are always talking about. Would this $1,000 assist you from the town? Would that kind of like work towards that? How would that work for you?
At this point, we are not planning on doing that this year because of pending legislation. with the state that has passed, because of the tragedy in Raleigh last year, passed what we consider to be very stringent safety guidelines that we may or may not be able to abide by. It was passed by the House back in April. It's sitting in the Senate at the state level presently, and we're concerned what may or may not happen, and a lot of time and effort by staff, which is me, and the 25 volunteers from the community last year that it took to put the parade on, that we would put all this effort into something that may or may not be able to be supported because of new safety regulations that are pending. So the option was to work with Parks and Rec to look at doing something that is the spirit of the parade, which is to engage the community, where you look at the youth being involved, whether it be the dance troops, whether it be the schools with the bands, the civic organizations being involved as well, so that we can capitalize on that idea of small town life and support that part of the strategic plan of the town and partner with the town in that regard.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Harrison?
Are you all, is the chamber still doing the monthly or the meetings with the mayor?
We, presently, the contact that I have with the town is Sheila Long with Parks and Rec, dealing more with events and youth-related initiatives. The other contact that I have is Shannon Johnson, who has come on as the Economic Development Specialist. And so working with her that are items that are more business-related. And so she and I have been communicating over the past week to get those on the mayor's schedule. So I've proposed to her about a week and a half ago certain dates, but yes.
And so if and when we are able to get those back on the calendar, the chamber will still provide refreshments, and one of the commissioners will be invited to come along to meet with the mayor and the residents at the chamber for the event that you all will put on?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to, as we are talking about the usage and joining, I wanted to make sure that we are still doing some of the things as far as the town is related, connected to the community, to ensure that the $1,000 is being spent well. And for my time at the chamber, I remember, breakfast and refreshments and meeting the mayor. So just those different things, I would love to make sure that those things continue to happen.
We are continuing to build on that.
Okay.
And, when we started that March 2022, the goal was, from the chamber's perspective, to serve as that liaison to help build connections, which is part of our mission, to build connections, relationships between our elected officials, our town staff, and then our townspeople, especially as the town is growing, to offer that opportunity for the two to come together in a positive environment, and for the townspeople to be able to get better acquainted, small setting, and then also to have educational opportunities from staff, commissioners, and the mayor.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I just want to clarify, what I'm hearing, there will be no Christmas parade. That's what you're saying. The chamber will not embark upon that at all.
Commissioner Miles, the decision was made by the chamber board as representative of our chamber members that will be the case this year because of the concern that we have. It's quite an undertaking. We had a lot of volunteer support last year, which I appreciated and the chamber appreciated. But really, it's looking at the fact that, as the legislation has been proposed, that any moving vehicle within the parade must be inspected by a qualified individual within 7 days of the parade occurring. We as the chamber do not have the capacity to do that. And we have various town staff that, and departments, but I think they're already stretched as they are. And so we're trying to think of an alternative that can grow with the town and grow with our population, and also provide opportunities for everyone to participate, because essentially that is the essence of the parade, is the participation of our children, our schools, our nonprofit organizations, and for them to showcase the fine work that they're doing.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the board? Any questions for John? Oh, Commissioner Baxter?
I really appreciate everything that the chamber does all the time. You guys work so hard. You and your volunteers are absolutely amazing, and the way that you support the town is so appreciated. I just wanted to have a better understanding of where we were landing upon that monetary, amount, but I do believe that the work that you're doing, $1,000 is absolutely worth it, just with how we partner with even just the coffee connections with the mayor is super, super valuable. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to explain a little bit more that was even outside of what we were originally talking about. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate y'all's participation and support.
Thank you.
So with that, Mayor, can I make a motion?
Well, don't we have to go back and, because that was pulled from, what was that pulled from?
No, she's correct. She can go, you
Okay.
pulled it, and she would just have to make a motion to approve that particular ordinance specifically.
Commissioner Baxter?
So I'd like to move to approve ordinance 2024-13, the Chamber of Commerce membership.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Commissioner Miles, thank you. Do we have discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Laux?
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Miles? Favor. Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Comments or, let's see. Board comments. Commissioner Laux.
Two quick items. I'd like to thank the town staff for pulling off another great Rock the Block. It was set up very quickly and torn down very quickly, and a great event. And number two, a reminder, we're in the middle of hurricane season, but if you can go to readywake.com, you can register for emergency alerts that are weather-related, anything else that happens in Wake County. So once again, that's readywake.com. I encourage you to sign up and register. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Harrison?
I just want to echo the sentiments for Rock the Block. I wanted to say rock on, rock the block, but that might sound a little corny, so I won't say that. So thank you all so much. It was a great event. It seems like every time it's bigger and better and more people, and I'm always surprised, especially when it's inclement weather and so many people show up. So great job to all the staff. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
And I agree with them. Rock the Block was lots of fun. My grandson had a great time showing his moves, as he calls them. So we really appreciate the fun we had.
Commissioner Baxter?
Oh, okay. So I had asked for I had done a public records request. I don't actually see the information in front of us. Is that something that you have to hand out to us now? Okay, thank you. So just a little bit of context. We have a wonderful event that is scheduled for November 11th that is being put on by Comic World. And they had indicated that they would like to seek a reduction in fees for this event, and it hadn't come before us. And there's been a little bit of a disconnect, I think, with who is responding to what emails surrounding this. And so thank you for getting this information. Unfortunately, we won't have time to read it for this meeting, but I would like to talk about this with my fellow commissioners, because I think that what they are asking, especially with the nonprofit component and the inclusion of the Wounded Warriors Project, and the fact that this checks the box as far as the partnership that they're creating to further economic development in our area and to bring people from all over the state to our town, that certainly we should consider a fee reduction, if not a fee elimination, for this event. And I know that that is something that would normally be initiated by Comic World, but they were having some trouble getting responses. And when I spoke with them, they hadn't had this was August 26th, and they hadn't had a response since July 19th. And so I'd like to enter in a little bit of a discussion about what the board's thoughts are on either asking for a very quick turnaround so that we can get a fee reduction proposal in place, or if we can't do that right here, right now. Thoughts, anybody?
Any, Commissioner Miles?
I say we take a look at it right now. I'm fine with that.
Commissioner Clark?
It seems like, to make a fee change, are we gonna, I mean, we revisit these things quite often. And this will be a money-making event. They will be charging at the door. And the Wounded Warriors will have a booth there. And they will not get any proceeds from the door, correct?
Eric?
I'm sorry, can you come to the
Come to the-
podium, please?
State your name for the record, please, and address.
My address?
Yes.
Eric Haberlin, it's 122 East Gannon, address of the business. And Wounded Warrior and us, we are in discussions of how much they would want from the door. It's kind of up to us past a certain point if we want to donate more to the, in which we probably will. We're looking at right now 10%, if not more, of the door fee will go towards Wounded Warrior.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrison?
I think that I'm definitely open to having having conversation about this. I think it's a great event, and my son, who is here, loves comic store, and we go in all the time. I think it will be a great conversation to table and talk about next week at our work session, especially if we're gonna have a conversation regarding reducing fees. I think it just will be a good time to get as much information as we can, and for you all to maybe solidify, what percentage you want to donate to Wounded Warrior.
It definitely would help.
Yeah, I think that would be great, just to maybe move it off for a few days and get that information, for sure.
Mr. Laux?
Yeah, I'll need more information at the work session, but if the event is free, that is one thing. But if the event is generating income, I'm a big believer in events supporting themselves and not being underwritten. Although I do favor seed funding to get something started, but after that, events should support themselves.
And
Commissioner.
could I ask, oh, sorry. Were you done?
I'm good.
Okay.
Commissioner Baxter?
Just since you're here, could you tell us a little bit about the event and what it's going to entail, and what, who you have coming, and what that means for the community?
I don't know if anybody here has been to a Comic-Con before, but it's a great place for people who love comics, anything geek, let's say, nerdy stuff. We're going to have the 1970s Batgirl is going to show up, which is a big draw to all these Comic-Cons. We're going to have some comic book artists. A lot of them are local. That have worked on several DC and Marvel comics. Some of the bigger guys are going to come here. We have someone who's made RPG games, like Alien. We all seen the movie. They do RPG Alien games, and they're going to come there as well. We have other people from around the state, other comic book businesses and collectors who are going to be there to be vendors. They're going to bring their clientele to our small little town. And Virginia, and I think South Carolina and Tennessee. We have people from everywhere coming in for this. And we started off for the Wounded Warrior Project, but then when we were told the cost, we had to actually start charging at the door so we can cover the cost of the rental of the space. That's kind of where that's coming from. So I understand your point. And we've also have friends who've done Comic-Cons in other cities where the town has actually said, okay, we're gonna partner with you every year. It's a reduced fee every year because you bring business to the town every year. So they get half rates at that point. So like Wake Forest has done that. We have a friend up there who does it every year for 10 years now. The mayor comes in actually and judges the cosplay. So it's open to anybody here who wants to be a judge on that.
Pressing up, Eric. So.
Yeah, yes. And there'll be cosplay for the kids. There'll be a game room. We have someone from Wilson, a game store, is going to come down and do a whole game room. So the kids are going to be able to go in there and play games, any game they want. Board games, Magic, Pokemon, all that stuff in there. So that's what it is. It's going to bring the community together and all these new people, because I don't know about anybody else, but we see a lot of the new people who are moving in. You know, hey, we just moved in, typed in comic book store, here you are. So we know there's a need, well, I'd say a need for it here in the small little town, because a lot of people like going to it. But the big ones down in Raleigh, they cost $85 to something like that to get in, and it's just not feasible. We're going to charge $5. Anybody under 12 gets in free. So it's not like a bank breaker to get in. Any other questions?
Any other questions, comments?
Comment. Sorry.
Yeah, I know it's your first event, but you have a ballpark on attendance?
You know, the first time, just going by other friends who've done it, they had probably around anywhere from 300 to 500 people attend in the beginning. So that's kind of what we're feeling we're trying to hope for right now. And I mean, I guess also we should say we have a lot of businesses from here, like Creative Cup is going to provide the drinks inside. We have the Fall Line is helping us as well, and they're going to have an after-hours party at the Fall Line. It's the local. We're trying to get the local businesses involved as well, to kind of bring the community together and support each other as well.
Commissioner Harrison.
I think that is wonderful. I'm so glad that my son has his headphones on, but we will be there anyway. I make a recommendation as far as the income that will be generated. I think Wounded Warrior is an amazing organization, but I would also like to recommend maybe a local nonprofit if you are considering donating some of the proceeds for the entry to one of the local, since we're supporting community and some of the community businesses will be there. I think it might be a really good idea to, you know, if you're thinking about increasing the percentage, maybe split the percentages between Wounded Warrior and a local Zebulon nonprofit.
We're definitely interested in anything like that. We definitely want to. We picked that because it was on Veterans Day.
Absolutely.
You know, the number one right there, Wounded Warrior. We have a lot of veterans that are coming and actually volunteering and helping the con out there as well.
And just a side note, Wake County has the largest number of veterans in the state, and so supporting Wounded Warrior Project actually is probably going to be supporting people in our town.
We do have probably half our vendors are veterans.
Yeah.
And so they're coming here as veterans, and they're going to be donating part of their proceeds to Wounded Warriors as well. So we're definitely doing our homework and trying to do this the right way.
Okay, so
Any other questions, comments?
If I make a recommendation, can I ask for support to move forward to ask staff to put this on our work session and to reach out to Comic World so that we can get the information that we need so that we can make a determination at the work session?
I think that's already been suggested by Commissioner Loucks.
I just want to make sure
that we look at this on our work session that's coming up and have some of this information that he was talking about.
Thank you so very much.
Live long and prosper. So do we need a motion for that? I think Commissioner Laux, you introduced the motion to bring
Move that we move the Mighty Con sponsorship to our upcoming work session.
and the date and time.
Oh, I don't have the date in front of me.
September 21st.
September 21st at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. Discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Laux.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor?
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
In favor.
Thank you. Motion passes. Commissioner Miles,
Oh, I'm not done yet.
board comment.
Yeah. I
We're-
was just wondering.
We're moving on. We'll
right,
we'll
we'll
come
come
to
back.
you. We'll come to you.
Fantastic.
Commissioner Miles, sorry.
Real fast. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. Popeyes is clucking open. And we can celebrate the honor and history's culture and contribution of our citizens of Hispanic descent every day, but even more so starting Friday, September 15th, 2023, with the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. And once again, I'd like to give a shout out to the Boys and Girls Club for the 8K. Being part of that was greatly appreciated. Excited to start training for next year. Reminder of the Government 101 series starting, coming up soon. And last but not least, we have a coat drive Friday, September 22nd at Gill Street Park. I'm sorry, Thursday, the 28th at Gill Street Park. And that's all. Unity through community.
Commissioner Baxter.
Just to piggyback off of Commissioner Miles's statement about the coat drive, well, the coat distribution. There's a coat drive going on right now, and
correct.
you can find places to drop off at the community center, at the Creative Cup, and at in this building, correct? Police department. Okay, thank you. And the police department. I think that we need to have a discussion sometime soon, now that we are members of NLC, who is going to attend the summit. I think it's important, and I think that definitely one or more of us needs to be going. We have right now a very unique opportunity for the town, and that is we have a need for an IT director, and we just happen to have a really super fantastic IT person who is looking to transition out of the corporate world. And so I would like to encourage staff to start getting that hiring process moving so that we can start taking applications. I'm sure that there are lots of individuals that will be applying, and I don't want to miss out on anyone. And finally, I'm going to try not to get emotional, but I might. No, I'm going to.
You want me to come back to you?
No. So last Tuesday night, I got a phone call from Amanda from Creative Cup. And she said, Shannon, there's been a young lady here all day, sitting outside in the alleyway in the heat. And the only reason I paid attention to it is because I've had to come here 3 times today. Normally I don't have to. And now we've closed, and she's sitting in the alley, and I don't know what to do. And so I got out of my pajamas and went down to meet her. On my way, I called the sergeant on duty because I figured that this might be a situation where we needed some extra assistance. You guys, we have such a special community. We're so blessed here. So blessed. We are blessed to have people aware enough to to recognize a situation when it's happening. And we have the best police department around, ever, maybe. They're phenomenal. This young woman had escaped a domestic situation. Fleeing from abuse is not an easy decision, especially when you have a 1-year-old child. At 24 years old, she was able to escape her abuser, drop off her child with her mother, and she found her way to Zebulon, where she was thinking that she would get some assistance, a couch to sleep on. That turned out to not be the case. And so she had been sleeping in our park bathrooms for the prior 3 nights. Guys, Interact is broken. There is no capacity in Wake County for anyone who needs a shelter. We are a very small municipality, but this is something that we have to really, really think about and keep in our hearts. And whether you're praying or sending good thoughts up into the universe, please keep this young woman in mind. I couldn't let her stay on the street, and so for the past week, she has been with my family. And it should not be so hard to not only escape a domestic situation, but to find help. We called everywhere in Wake County and Nash County and Johnston County and Franklin County. Fortunately, we have such a wildly robust group of people that love our town so much that I was able to call Sheila from Dreamcoat Ministries, and she said, please come and get this girl some clothing. I was able to reach out to my church, and they provided a few dollars. Commissioner Laux, when I told him what happened, I hadn't even finished and his wallet was open. After a week, we have found her a situation that is not ideal, but it's a situation where she will be safe and she will be sheltered. However, she will be 4 hours away from her child, and that's going to be difficult for her. But God bless our town. God bless our officers who were on duty. They were caring, they were kind, they were very, very delicate. They tried for hours to find her shelter. So, if you guys would like to go ahead and put a little extra money on the Creative Cup account for the officers, that would be fantastic, so that they can get themselves a coffee when they have a super tough night where they try for hours to find a young woman housing and are unable to get it. So anyway, next time we're thinking about maybe we're angry that the line at Popeyes is too long, or whatever it might be, that the town's not doing something that you think that they ought to, please try to remember this situation and keep it in your heart, because I'm not saying that we knock it out of the park all the time, but we made a really big difference in one young woman's life last week. And so I'm proud of us. I'm so super proud of our officers, and I'm super proud of the people that we have living here that are cognizant enough to recognize situations and to take action. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I just had a few follow-up comments.
Congratulations to the Mudcats for making the playoff. They hadn't made the playoffs in 15 years, so playoff starts tomorrow. Good luck to them. There's also a scan for ZDAC. It's asking for a survey. I would hope that folks will go on there and express their opinions about some of the things that ZDAC is looking forward to doing. We also have a scan for Parks and Rec, and I would hope that citizens will take advantage of that scan also to give us input and guidance on where we want to go. So those are my only two comments. Manager Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll recognize Michael Clark to provide the development update.
Good evening once again, Mayor, members of the board. As always, our interactive development map is the easiest way for citizens to know what's going on in and around Zebulon. Let's work through this. On the town's website, the easiest way to get to it is drop down from the Departments tab to Planning, and then in the middle of the page, when it comes up, click on Interactive Development Map, and then as always, easiest to just click full screen to make sure it's as large as possible. There are several items of note. First of which is there's been continuous revisions to the Chambly Lake development. We've been in contact with this applicant. As of right now, they are anticipating coming back before you, as well as the planning board, for joint public hearing in October. There's been several revisions that we learned about middle of last week after we met with Commissioner Baxter. It was slightly after that we learned about several changes, and it sounds like they'll be contacting each of you to get further input regarding some of the discussions that occurred. There was a development that kind of sat still for a while called Zebulon South. They have resubmitted based on some of the comments that were received approximately 6 months ago, and this is their second iteration. There's still a couple more iterations probably before you'll see them come before you for joint public hearing. This is known as the phase-in track off of Gannon. This one has also come back to life recently. We'll be meeting with the attorney for this later this week. They'll be looking, this will also be a plan development request that'll be coming before you for joint public hearing sometime late fall or into the winter, most likely. There's been a lot of questions regarding Wakeland Mills. The applicant is still kind of weighing what options he wants to pursue. Once again, while the applicant did acquire the property, there's been no application that's come forward past the application that was heard at the joint public hearing. If there is a new application that comes before or a significant revision, there's been enough time that has lapsed, it will have to come back for another joint public hearing, which will give the citizens another opportunity to voice their input directly. Next week, you'll hear a joint public hearing regarding the Zebulon Animal Hospital. This is at the intersection of North Rendell and Green Pace. It is for conditional rezoning from residential to commercial for the relocation of the existing Zebulon Animal Hospital. We do have a couple economic development elements to also talk about. First of which is McClellan Bagpipes is in the final running in what is known as the coolest things made in North Carolina. If you go to the town's Facebook page, you'll have an opportunity to vote once per day along with 15 other applicants or potential awardees to determine what is the coolest thing and realistically how much cooler can you get than making bagpipes. Come on. Last but not least, it was discussed earlier that we did have a new business open up today, not to name any names, Popeyes, but fortunately there was no line. The chicken was delicious, but they are officially open right for business. And with that, I'm available if you have any questions.
Is the bag empty? Come on.
I have a question.
Sure.
So with the Wacolon Mills property, if they resubmit, is this starting the process completely over again so that they would have to adhere to the utility allocation policy?
No, at this point, it would be an amended application.
Okay.
As opposed to a full new application. Once they pass the 1 year mark from last action, then they would have to submit a brand new application.
And what day would that be?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay. And then with a reimagined and hopefully much better proposed development, will the same parameters go out as far as like, will they have to have another community meeting? Will they have to send out notices or not?
It's really going to be dependent upon the scale of the development and when they come back in. If it is minor enough in nature where they're not really introducing a new product or products or anything in terms of their mix, it'll be an existing application, in which case the application process is locked in from based on the state's permit of choice law. Anything after that, if they need to submit a new application, they will be required to do a new neighborhood meeting. One way or another, they're going to be coming back before you for a new joint public hearing, though. That I'm assured of. In early discussions with the attorney that's representing the applicant, once they do decide what they want to do, they do intend to hold a neighborhood meeting on their own accord. While it would not be required per our process, being that they've already technically had two, it would be something that they'd be interested in doing, though.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Recognize Lisa Markland, HR Director for Human Resources Update.
We have been doing a lot since the budget was approved. We have been advertising for quite a few positions. Public Works had 3 positions. The Police Department has 3 positions. Parks and Recreation had 3. Now they have 2. Planning has 3 openings as well. The engineering position. So we have been doing a lot of advertising. Several have closed. The Public Works positions, the 3 there, Equipment Operator 1 and Equipment Operator 2, those have closed. The Police Department is open until filled. Parks and Recreation, the Program Coordinator is open until filled. The Recreation Assistant closes on the 15th. The 3 planning positions, those have closed as well. We will be working on scheduling for interviews and things like that. The engineering has closed and it's shortlisted, so we're moving forward with that. On the IT director, that just to give you an update on that, we will be working on that as soon as we complete the assessment center for the engineer, and we will be looking at developmental associates to do the research for that. They have been very successful in helping us find applicants, so we will be working with them. IT is very, very competitive, as the engineering position is, so we covered all the help that we can get, getting as many people as possible to apply that are qualified and can fill the position and do the best job for us. So that's where we are right now. Any questions?
Where do we stand as far as an assistant town manager?
That was budgeted for half a year, and that will come after the IT director.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Miles?
Clarify that time frame. What time frame we're looking at, the half a year for the assistant town manager? What?
Correct.
When would that start?
That's looking, it was budgeted starting in January, if I'm not mistaken, so we want to get the IT director in, and then the assistant town manager.
So January, we'll have somebody on board, or we'll start the process of hiring?
Oh, no, we would like to start before that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Manager Ward.
This is really just context. We don't have a report prepared for you. But when I first got here, I wanted the different departments to get in front of you. And so I started asking them to put quarterly reports, and in the case of the financial reports, on a monthly basis under consent. And we have been changing that over time. The quarterly reports, as an example, we pulled that into your work sessions to allow you to have more give and take rather than just a static report. And we're doing something similar with financial, where we're pulling it as an addendum. The biggest thing is by having these on consent, these are really not items that boards vote on. And so just from here moving forward, you'll see the monthly financial report as an addendum because it's not an item to vote upon. That said, we'll take any questions or comments that you have.
Questions from the board? Thank you.
That concludes the manager's report.
Did we get clarification on something you had mentioned? I'm drawing a blank right now. About going to the National City League.
Oh, yeah, the National League of Cities. I mean, we can talk about that at our work session.
Yes,
but I just want to make sure that it's in our minds, and if we could get that put on the agenda, that would be super helpful, just so that that doesn't fall through the cracks, because that summit is in November.
Yes, that was the clarification I wanted. Cool. Make sure it's on the work session, this coming work session. Commissioner Miles?
One question, Town Manager. I see we have planning. Mike gives an update. The economic developer, I don't see her present. How can we kind of make that where she's kind of more present here at the meetings, where we can get an update of some sort from her, seeing exactly what we get? I know they kind of like the two departments kind of overlap a little bit, but at the rate that we're growing, I think it's important that she's going to be somewhere kind of sitting in the audience and kind of get a little bit of insight of what her thoughts process or where we stand on the growth things, aspect of things.
Okay. So economic development is a division within the planning department. Whenever we bring her here, I have to pay her on an hourly rate. That said, we will get her and economic development in front of you more purposefully. The way we're going to start is at the work session next week. Planning department is due to give a quarterly report. We will have, as part of that, an economic development report. So you will, on a quarterly basis, get an economic development quarterly report. In addition to that, you will hear at that presentation the makeup and the schedule for the development of the economic development strategic plan. And you will hear milestones associated with that project. And so you will hear a report out from Ms. Johnson as those milestones come about. So those will be in addition to the quarterly reports. And then the last thing, we will incorporate an economic development component into the development update on a monthly basis. I don't know that it'll be Ms. Johnson presenting, but it will definitely be Mr. Clark presenting information. So that's our plan right now. We'll see how effective it is for you all, and we'll adapt as we always do.
Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think she's on our next coffee with the mayor.
Yes, sir. She is arranging it, and we're interested in getting Caleb, perhaps. Okay, awesome. Because he's one of the newest staff members and the newest position, so she was going to talk with Caleb about possibly doing that.
And that's sometime in October.
As soon as she confirms with your calendar, I'll send it out.
And one last thing from me as well. I know Public Works just hired their second command. I asked that we would bring that gentleman before us and present him to the community. That would be greatly appreciated. I've asked this a series of times, but it hasn't happened yet. But I would like for that gentleman to come and be presented to the community and let them know that who he is and what it's about.
I like to know who we've hired and get introductions. I mean, we have this lovely little family here, and it's nice to just be able to welcome them.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Any other comments, Manager Moore?
No, that concludes the manager's report, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn? Thank you, Commissioner Laux. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion to adjourn. Sure. Before I forget, I need to send you an email.